welcome you all to the first guest session under the initiative Entrepreneurship Club by the Placement Cell. The Placement Cell is dedicated to stimulating entrepreneurial learning and providing enhanced opportunities through action and experience. We are extremely honored to have with us Ms. Megha Agarwal, founder and CEO at Leap Skills. Leap Skills was incorporated in 2013. It is an award-winning organization specializing in technology-led blended learning programs to build 21st century skills. Thank you so much for joining us today, ma'am. The interview will have three segments. We'll start with a few questions pertaining to your organization and then move on to rapid fire questions and closing questions.
Let's get started. Thank you so much for inviting me, and it's an exciting initiative, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Thank you, ma'am. So, ma'am, to begin with, the first question that we have for you, what inspired you to start this company? And adding on to that, how did you come up with the name of your organization, and what is the significance of this name?
Okay, so I'm just trying to figure out how to best answer that because these are loaded questions, and so I'll give you a sense for what motivated me to start the organization. I come from a very conservative family, but I was born in Delhi and grew up and studied in Delhi, did my undergrad here. I think my family, albeit was very conservative, it had the privilege of being able to understand the career choices I was making, and there were options open to me to be able to go study. I went and studied at the University of Oxford, the London School of Economics. I, worked in Morgan Stanley in London, New York. So I think that realization that my opportunity came from also partially where I was born. And I think as a country, we need to change that. Can opportunity stop being a function of where you're born and instead be a function of your skills, your audacity to dream big, how willing you are to work hard for it? Opportunity needs to be a function of that. And that's what prompted me to start Leap. The idea was that in every small village, every small town of India, there is, a motivated, amazing student sitting somewhere. And can we create a world where she has the opportunity to go achieve her dreams and somebody tells her, no, it's possible, and work for them and really make an equal playing ground. So that is the motivation, and that's what keeps me going, on a day-to-day basis. And that's why I came back to India. I moved back in 2012 and started Leap in 2013. So that's the first part of your question. The second part, the name is actually a funny story. I didn't have a good name for the company. I know I know that I needed it to be simple. I wanted it to resonate with people, and I wanted it to stand for what we were talking about, which is really genuinely progressing, which is creating equal opportunity. So what I actually did was send out an email to some of my closest friends who are sitting all over the world right now and said that, hey, I'm running a poll, start sending me names that you think, this is my vision, this is what I want to do, send me names. So I got all sorts of names coming back. And one of my closest friends from Oxford sent me the name Leap. He actually, it's an acronym. Leap stands for Learning, Employability, and Progress. So what he came back was learning, employment, and he said, I'm not sure what the P should stand for, but I like it. So that's how the name got born. And then we changed it a little bit and came up with Learning, Employability, and Progress.
Ma'am, that is quite wonderful. That sounds so exciting. So, ma'am, adding on to that, is there any specific reason behind you choosing this particular sector for your organization?
Yeah, I think it's similar to what I just said, Isha, that it's critical that opportunity can be equalized. And I feel that one of the biggest ways of achieving your dreams is when this inner strength comes, right? Like when you believe that I can do this, and you think of every person in the world who's ever said you can't do this. And then you suddenly draw strength from that, right? And you say that, no, I'm going to show them that I can do this and so much more. And that was why skills, right? Because if you know you can do it, there is nothing in the world that gives you more empowerment than knowing your own abilities, than being in a place where everybody is telling you that this is something you can do, you can learn it, you can develop grit, you can develop resilience, you can develop innovation, you can develop cognitive flexibility. I think those are such powerful instincts. And that's why skills, because once you teach somebody how to do them, once they learn how to do something themselves, there's nothing holding them back. And like nothing can hold them back ever.
That's really inspiring. Ma'am, what were the challenges that you faced in the course of establishing your organization as an entrepreneur, and how did you overcome them? Again, what is the driving force behind you and your organization?
I can spend 3 hours to you on many days talking about the challenges. So I'm thinking of what I can tell you that's, really critical. I think one of the biggest challenges for Leap was that we're a social enterprise, right? And we are focusing on our customers who are mostly from low-income households. Most of them are first-generation college goers. Nobody in their family has been to a college before, and they have over years been indoctrinated into thinking that government jobs are the only way to be. That you need to study for government jobs. So I think the biggest challenge was to create a market-based model, business model out of this ecosystem struggling with these constraints on an ongoing basis, because fundamentally your customer doesn't necessarily see the value of what you're bringing to the table. Even if she sees the value, her parents or she is not willing to spend money on it. And then building a robust business model out of that was, I think, fundamentally the biggest challenge that I think we saw at Leap. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am, that does. And
Yeah.
that's quite true. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, ma'am, how do you, yeah.
No, you were going to ask now. Your second part was, what is the driving force and
Driving
what?
force
Yeah.
behind you. Yes, ma'am.
Bunches of things. Yeah, I think the biggest driving force, I think there are two. One is my learners, my students. They are absolutely incredible. And in the first few years, I actually lived in the small towns that we worked in. So my co-founder, me, my entire team, we used to go spend 3 days a week in small town Haryana, live there. We did that for 4 years. And through that, got to know some of our first couple of years plus students really well. And they are such inspirations. Yeah, like they are young girls from small villages who had to fight against all the odds to, one, go to college, to join our programs, and now they're supporting their entire families. I'm still in touch with them. I still go for coffee with them once in a while. And they really, I think they're my biggest inspiration. The second inspiration I feel like I have is my team. I have been really lucky with the sort of people who chose to stand with me when we were conceiving of this. And on a bad day, I know they all have my back. And I think that immensely multiplies the kind of energy, the kind of motivation, and the kind of resilience I can bring to the table. So I think those two things, my students and my team, keep me going every day.
Yeah, ma'am, that is quite wonderful. Absolutely loved your answer here. Ma'am, how do you take out time for yourself amidst the hectic work schedule that you have? And how important do you think it is to have hobbies and interests?
This is a funny question, and I feel all entrepreneurs who've set something up are going to say something similar. It's absolutely critical. It's absolutely critical to take time out for yourself, because you're consumed, right? You don't switch off when you officially your working day stops, right? You're constantly working at night. You're thinking of problems you need to solve. So it's all consuming, and that's also what's brilliant about it, right? Because it's all you. There is no distinction between heart and head when you're an entrepreneur. Everything is one, right? And that's also what is really brilliant about it. But on the flip side, it's exhausting. And it's critical to take time out for yourself. I think the way I have done this, two things. One, I was also really good friends with my team members. I think over the years, we all developed very deep friendships. And before COVID hit, when we were still in office or we were traveling, we all made sure that we ate dinner together, we chilled, had a drink or two if we had to, just had a good time, and let our head down a little bit, because in the absence of just that, it becomes exhausting to start again, right? Like just take it easy a little, I think was important. Hobbies, yeah, absolutely. Like before I came I had 3 meetings today in the morning. Before a shower, I promised myself that, I will work out a little. So I found time for a little workout. Then I ran, then I had another meeting. And then I, of course, became late by 5 minutes for your meeting. So there are a bunch of things, but I think finding the time and identifying what recharges you, gives you positive motivation, I think is really important, specifically in these times. So yeah, I think as entrepreneurs, please do take out time for yourself, as impossible as that sounds.
Yes, ma'am, that is so true. That is really true. Ma'am, what piece of advice would you give to college students who wish to build an organization from scratch, who actually want to become entrepreneurs?
Uh, I would say do it. That's the first thing, that you have the luxury of trying something and failing right now. So do it if you can. The other couple of things I would say is find a mentor. Find a couple of people you can genuinely go talk to, learn from, get advice. It's difficult, to start your journey, specifically at this stage when you guys are tempted by placement offers and all sorts of things. I think these are very real trade-offs that you have to make. I think, so one, find a mentor. Two, find a real problem that you want to solve. Like, unless you really genuinely believe that, one, there is a problem, two, you either have a solution or you feel like you will be able to develop a solution, don't do it. Entrepreneurship is difficult. Entrepreneurship is a real commitment, and it's also thrilling, but it's only thrilling if you genuinely believe in the problem and the solution. In the absence of that, I don't think it will work. So just don't lie to yourself. Talk to people, test your problem, test your solution, see if it excites you, see if it keeps you up at night. Imagine, take my word for it, that you will fail. I'm still failing. I'm 8 years into this, 3 companies down. I fail every day. So remember that you will fail, and that's all right. But the reason you will get up again is because you believe in the problem you're trying to solve. So in the absence of that, don't do it. And if you have that, don't think twice, just do it.
That was quite insightful, ma'am. Ma'am, we'll move on to the next segment now. This is the rapid fire round. And the first question we have for you is, what would you say are the top 3 skills needed to be a successful entrepreneur or an organizational leader?
Grit, leadership, and the ability to fail, innovate, get up again, fail again, innovate again.
If you were to write a book about you and your organization, what would be its name?
I saw this and I have no idea. I have no idea. But maybe I'll come back to the name of the organization. But, and what was the second part of the question?
Ma'am, the next question that we have for you is, if you had to come up with 3 words to describe the culture you want to create, what would they be?
Trust. Like, everyone in the organization should have the ability to voice whatever it is that they have, what they bring to the table, and know that it's a safe workplace and they can trust each other into being heard, into their ideas being heard. The second is in line with what you asked around what qualities an entrepreneur needs to have. I think I need my culture to be of grit, of resilience, knowing that nobody told us it's going to be easy, but that's all right. That's what also makes it really fun on a day-to-day basis. And the third is innovation. Like, because the problems we've all set out to solve are real, are difficult, because if they hadn't, somebody would have solved them already, right? There wouldn't have been problems. You have to be all right with just thinking continuously on your feet, trying something, like I said, fail fast, fail often, and get up again to do something. Don't make the same mistakes again. I think those 3 are probably the big buckets I've built in my organization and highly recommend to anybody who wants to try them.
Ma'am, what do you think about the industries that would be booming in the future, and as youth, we should focus on them?
It's interesting, Isha. I think there are lots of problems that are coming up now, specifically also in light of the way the world has moved in the last year. I think technology, of course, is not a surprise, right? I mean, any format in which you can disrupt the traditional method of delivery, um, I think is something to watch out for. My sense is EdTech, you've seen a boom, health tech, you are seeing it, it's starting to come up in a big way. I definitely enterprise SaaS, so B2B businesses in which, you are creating softwares as a solution, as a service for other enterprises is something that's also going to come up in a big way. Employment is a big problem right now. In addition to skills, employment is also a problem, right? So figuring out a way to bridge the gap between where jobs are being created to where people are and job seekers are is another, I think, booming enterprise. Yeah, I think to name a few, these are definitely a few that come into mind. But I think the big thing I would say is, guys, focus on cognitive flexibility, which means focus on your ability to keep learning new things, to adapt. The idea behind 21st century skills are, these are skills like communication, collaboration, grit, cognitive flexibility, because these skills are going to come in handy whatever you do, independent of what career choice you make, entrepreneurship, jobs, government jobs, further studying, whatever. I do think that these skills will come in handy. Everything else is something you can learn. So just have the ability to adapt. Don't be nervous. Don't be scared of change. Embrace it.
Very rightly put out. Learning never stops, right? So, ma'am, what are the must-read books for a college student like us?
Again, I don't have any magical answers here, but and today the formats of learnings have changed so much. You can, if nothing else, those of you who can get onto Clubhouse, listen to podcasts, identify podcasts that are interesting. A book which I read, which really affected me, was The Hard Thing About Hard Things. I would recommend that highly. It really talks about good, bad, and ugly of starting a company, so you know what you're walking into. Because all of us talk about how amazing it is to be an entrepreneur, which it is, but there are tons of things which make it really hard to go to sleep, and you should just walk into it and make that choice in an empowered manner. Don't walk into it blindsided. Know what you're signing up for, and then I promise you, you will have the time of your life.
Ma'am, we'll move on to the last segment. The question that we have for you is, if you had the chance to start your career all over again, is there anything that you would want to do differently?
Uh, I'm thinking, and I don't think I have any regrets. I think I learned a lot with every decision. The only thing I would say, and maybe this is a part of career, is after, so I did my economics at St. Stephen's. And of course, I had tons of friends at SRCC. And then went on to study at Oxford, where I also studied economics. At that point, I did an internship with Morgan Stanley, where I got an offer to join them full time in their investment banking team. I think the only decision that I feel that I learned from is that I went in for a second master's at the London School of Economics in finance and economics immediately after Oxford. I feel like in hindsight, now I tell all my younger colleagues in LEAP that take time to figure out what you really want to do in life and then make a decision around the master's. And I'm saying this specifically because I know that this is a real trade-off that a lot of you are going to make right now. My sense is if you're choosing between an MBA and starting something of your own, start something of your own. Even if you fail, go do it. You can go to an MBA if you still want to do it 2 years out, right? But don't sign up for something just because everyone's telling you it's a safe option. Maybe you'll find something else you really want to study, yeah? And then you can really go do your master's in that subject. Maybe that's the only thing I would do differently in my life, though I loved my experience at the LSE, but I feel like I learned very little, if that makes sense.
That does make sense, ma'am. Ma'am, the last question that we have for you is, where do you see your company in next 5 years?
Uh, you know, I see LEAP as continuing to be a thought leader in this space. I think the space is constantly evolving, using technology-aided learning for first-time tech users. Most of my girl students, for example, don't even have their own phones. Like lots of times we hear stories of the family having a phone or their brother having a phone, and my girl student actually staying up at 11 or 12 at night when everybody else has gone to sleep to use the phone to do her homework. So if we can continue to be the leaders in bringing first-time technology users, low-income students to the formal workspace and to empower them, I feel like I want to be able to do that at scale, but that involves a lot of thought leadership. So I feel like the way LEAP needs to work is continuously demonstrate that this is possible by example, show the country that it's possible, it's doable. Here you go. These are the 10,000 students we've trained this year. See now if we can replicate this at the policy level. I think that's the direction in which I want to chase it. I'm not looking at massive numbers. We have two other companies where we are growing traditionally. I think LEAP is definitely going in the direction of a thought leader.
Absolutely wonderful, ma'am, and that sounds amazing. We thank you, ma'am, for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure to have you with us and hear your thoughts and your experiences. I am so sure this session has been an enriching one, and we look forward to hosting you again. And we wish you all the very best for future, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good luck.